Hello, I am Chris from DSX Machina, and I am with
Nicole.
my fiance for probably a very long time. And we are here to review one of the largest, beefiest games that I think you'll ever see.
It'll never fit on this table.
Actually, this is an expansion for an older game which also got re-released, Deep Space D6. Let's have a look. Prepare yourself for the most epic game of the year. That's right, we're reviewing Deep Space D6. No, despite appearances, this game is not related to Choose Your Own Adventure. What we have is a solitaire die placement game. Opening the box, we find stickers you can use with both 15 or 19mm wooden discs, which are not included in the game and are never explained. Good start. Inside we find not one, not three or four, but two decks of threat cards, the original Ouroboros and the new Endless Expansion deck. We'll be using the former for now. This entails putting aside the Ouroboros end boss cards. The game offers several ways to deploy them, but I think the best is to simply separate these until you can't draw any more cards. We've got 4 cubes, 2 blue, a green and a gray, the latter 2 for shields and hull respectively. The blue reserved for upgrade cards, another new feature. And I totally put those cards in the wrong place. Here are those upgrade cards, as well as the custom crew dice, 6 in all identical, and the standard black threat die. When play begins, unfold and deploy your ship. And what is most appreciative about Deep Space D6 is that it includes 4 of them, each utilizing dice in different ways, which we will explain later. There is the Halcyon, the Athena Mark II, that one, and finally, upside down, the AG8. The latter 2 are more complicated than the others, so we'll stick with the first while explaining the rules. Regardless, place the infirmary nearby. Place the upgrade cards cost side up across the top. Shuffle the threat deck, place nearby, draw 2 to start. That's an event, not a ship. We'll get back to those. I said wheel. Wow. Okay, here we go. Raiders. -1 hull, ignore shields. The strength of the enemy determines its placement on the right side of your tracker. And another. The game begins. Roll the dice and assign the results. If a threat, it is placed immediately atop the board. The dice are locked, gain 3, and immediately draw a threat. The red arrows are tactical and generally fire weapons. With the Halcyon, it allows 1 damage plus 2 for each additional arrow placed. So by placing 2, I inflict 3 damage that can be distributed to any of the threats. This reduces 1 threat off the board and the second down to 1 hit point. 1 threat down, 47 to go. Assigning the purple medical die on the Halcyon allows the removal of 1 threat die. Might as well do that twice. End of round, draw a threat, place it, and roll the die. If the threat die matches any of those found on threats, said threats activate, even if multiple threats do so. Unless stated otherwise, shields are always head first. Thus starts a new turn. The dice are rolled, 1 threat is placed at the top, 2 tactical dice equals 3 damage, which will clean out our threat row. We only acquire 1 green science die to completely rebuild our shields with the Halcyon, leaving 1 more plus the orange engineering die. I said if you fill up the top row, those dice are released, but you immediately draw another threat. A blue commander die can be used to change a crew die to any face. But let's say we want to assign those remaining crew dice to upgrades. Assign a die to a matching card, place a blue cube, and shift said cube right as each type of appropriate dice are assigned. When the last space is assigned, you gain that upgrade. With only 2 blue dice, only 2 upgrades can be worked on at the same time. These upgrades are valuable options when crew dice cannot be used on the board. Advanced Tactics allows rerolls. The Biotic Med Lab returns 1 crew member from the infirmary each round. The Shatter Mines and Gauss Cannons both offer alternative weapons, as does the Insane Gravity Nuke, though that also destroys your shields. All of these require a die to be assigned for activation. Finally, the cloaking field allows you to not roll the threat die as long as you did not assign any tactical dice during that round. The process repeats until the threat deck is empty, the only route to success. If your hull is reduced to 0 hit points or if all the crew are locked by the threat row or infirmary, you lose the game. Like I said, each ship is slightly different, with different functions for each die. The green science die with the Halcyon recharges the shield or activates a stasis beam that prevents an enemy from being activated. The orange engineering can repair the hull, purple medical returns a threat or heals someone from the infirmary, red tactical fires weapons, and the blue command changes another die. But with AG8, the rules change. Now you must roll an orange engineering die to assign a die result to one of the locked drone positions. These results remain and you can call on them each turn. Alas, note you cannot return threats. Set threat row is only 2. The command blue now offers rerolls. The fixed dice are a cool alteration, but it's balanced by the lack of strong shields. You must assign crew to launch or recall on a drone, a significant play variation to the base Halcyon. The that one inflicts damage based on the values of the other dice. The big change is override. Place the command die over one of the die results atop the ship. When rolling threats, that value is ignored. Finally, the Athena Mark II is a variation of the base Halcyon. Purple command die now copies other die results that turn. Red tactical inflicts more damage but cannot be split between targets. There's a quantum cannon that shuffles a threat back into the deck. That's kind of useless. And finally, a scan allows you to peek at the next 2 cards in the threat deck, replacing them in any order. Oh right, those event cards. Place them over the ship. They remain until removed with the correct die assignment. There are even a few which are positive, thankfully. It should be noted that when finally exhausting the threat deck, you deal out the 6 boss cards. The Ouroboros creates a cool image of a larger construct, which maintains its shape no matter how it is placed on the board. It has some nasty attacks, as well as a pervasive barrier that, if destroyed, can come back to protect the whole. Destroy all of this, as well as the other threats, to win the game. By the way, the Endless expansion has its own network enemy, the Apex, using similar rules. Also, if you expected a story to go along with this, I'm sorry to disappoint, there really isn't any. And that's Deep Space D6. And we're back. So as I have explained, the actual review is going to be for both. This expansion here, which you can see is this huge box, only has 42 new threats, the 6 upgrades, and the new Ouroboros monster. The primary of the game is here, and this is a game from 2015 that's been reprinted in 2018. Just got delivered at the end of the year. Nice. I completely forgot I backed it. The first thing you'll think, this is not a choose your own adventure, because this box art looks exactly like it's a choose your own adventure.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen one in a while.
Yeah. Oddly enough, you've played this game almost as many times as me. What are your thoughts?
I'll say it's extremely interesting.
I'll sing Spotlight.
It's the only solitary player game that I've seen, really.
Well,
I'm not talking about games that...
on Nyram.
Yeah, but it can also be played as a 2-player game.
Yeah,
this is solely a solitary game.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else you can play 1 player, but this one is designed specifically for 1 player.
I find it really interesting that they don't even try to give you a 2-player option. Because on Nyram, Sylveon, we have 4 of the Universe games behind us. Those games give you 2-player options. Like, they're designed to be single, solitaire games, but they'll give you a 2-player option. This gives you no option at all for 2 players.
Unless the other player just moves the dice for you.
Well, you could also just simply rotate the dice.
Yeah.
I would never do that for 3 or 4 players. The game isn't big enough for that. But you roll the dice, hand the dice over to the player, and he does, or he or she plays their turn.
But not speaking of making it cooperative, the solitaire part I quite enjoy.
Yeah.
It's a nice game to play by yourself where you just try and keep your ship up and running. You try and avoid being completely destroyed by other alien ships.
You haven't actually lost this game. I have once.
I almost lost.
You almost had all your crew die.
At the beginning of the game.
Yeah, that was actually pretty... You fluked out. That was pretty close. In the first game, you almost died once, and then it was smooth sailing from that point on. So this game does suffer a little bit of randomness, but it's also... I felt it should be shorter than it is. I always thought that was really weird.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you're always surprised... You're like, I have to go through this entire deck of 42 cards. And like 20 minutes later, and you're still playing, and I'm like, wow, we're still playing this game.
Yeah.
Because you think, like on an iron, you can burn through in 5-6 minutes.
Depending on your luck.
True. Deep Space D6, a fun game. I really like. I love die placing games. I think it's a good foundation on which to build and build more to it. It's kind of weird. I shouldn't be asking more out of it. It reminds me a lot of a game called Faster Than Light. I'm not sure if you know that. It's a game on Steam. I actually don't care for it. I prefer a game that's similar called Everspace, which is Sully Variation. It's a roguelike. The idea that you're sending a ship through sectors. You have a crew that you're trying to keep alive and get the ship to its destination. This almost feels like that, except it doesn't have any thematic connective tissue. You're just rolling dice and defeating the threats. It would be really nice if this game had story points. Like every single time you would enter a new sector, you'd roll story, and then you would have some kind of unique narrative.
Yeah.
That would be really cool. Instead of just here are our threats, we're rolling against them and then trying to defeat them and then playing against the...
Oh, that would be interesting.
That would be interesting. I mean, it's a pretty simple game. You're rolling dice, you're distributing dice amongst the abilities, activating some. I will say that this game is phenomenally better with the upgrade cards.
Okay.
Which are those?
I haven't.
Those are the 6.
Oh, those ones. Okay.
Yeah, because you haven't played the basic version.
No.
You've only played it with the upgrade cards in the Endless expansion.
Which, even though I kind of put some effort into upgrading them, I don't necessarily use them that often.
I have a bit more, but I think the reason why I like them is because it gives you stuff to do.
So you don't have useless dice all the time, and it gives you more options.
Because that's a problem with the base game.
Yeah.
The base game, you would roll 5-6 dice, and then on situations 4 or 5 dice could just be useless, so very little happens.
Yeah.
At least when you have the Endless expansion, you're still putting dice out in other locations. So I like that. The final encounters are definitely interesting. There's a boss built up of several cards. That's cool as well. Mm-hmm. The art style is simple.
Very simple. But the simplicity makes it more playable, I think.
I find it appealing. It could almost have gone a full 8-bit format. Then I really would have thought it was comparing itself to Faster Than Light. I like the fact there's multiple ships.
Yeah, that is nice.
The fact that there's four ships in there makes it really useful. But it gives me an idea for the idea of a 2-player version. Now, I've tested this out only on one game. So my idea for a 2-player variation is to give each player a ship, right? Yep. Not the one that uses the drones, because that locks dice out. So you have basically 3 ships to choose from. Yeah, those 3 ships. And you roll dice, you place them, and so forth. When you roll the escalation die, then all escalation die get rolled on that player's board. Mm-hmm. So you don't have escalation on 2 dice. That's the only big compromise. Yeah. So if this guy has an escalation, then all the dice get placed on there. And then you simply move your dice to the next player. You both draw on your turns threats on your respective boards. However, when you roll dice on your turn, the numbers affect both. So it makes it a teeny bit more difficult because you may not be able to mitigate the damage if someone rolls a die on your side. Mm-hmm. Okay? And that's basically it. But that also means that you only have to deal with potentially half as many threats in comparison. The other rules is if you combine that with the Endless expansion and you're using the upgrades, when you pay for an upgrade, you take that upgrade yourself. So the other person doesn't get them. There's 6 upgrades, so you can have 3 and they can have 3. But until you start researching and you finish the research, anybody can donate to a research, but only one person can claim it in the end. I played it once. It worked. It was fun. And I'm always surprised whenever I think of a simple solution like that. And I go, well, why didn't they think of it? And you supplied 4 ships. Why don't simply use those 2 ships to make it a 2-player game?
Most likely because they were designing it for a solitary game.
That's true.
But
being a small box, would you say that it's a good game for transport, like portability?
Yeah. There's not too many small pieces. I mean, there's a couple small cubes, but...
Yeah, the cubes are really tiny.
The rest of it, you can fit it out on on a table decently, especially if you play a solitary version.
Very much so. Like I said, yeah, art design is simple, very simple. I mean, it's real basic.
It's way more portable than Tiny Epic.
Really?
In terms of content?
Desk floor space, yeah. When you table space, certainly, because Tiny Epic Galaxies is a small game until you unpack it, and then it gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
This
and
game.
There's so many small parts.
So with that out of the way, what score would you give Deep Space D6?
Probably a 7.
7? Okay.
7 pending 8. Probably 8 if we could find a way to play it together. A nice way without completely changing a game.
Well, like I said, the format that I offered should be functional. I think it feels like it's be balanced. The important thing is that you can't share escalation, otherwise you'll lock out all your dice.
Yeah.
That system should work. So it's at that point it becomes, I think, a kind of a neat cooperative game. I would give it a 6.5, rounding up to a 7. I give it around 6.5 or 7. It's a fun game. I like the idea. I know it's one of the points when I look at a game like this, I go, why you could have gotten more. I want more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it would have been nice if you added a narrative. But like I said, if I was reviewing the game on its own, I give it a 6. It goes up to 7 because of the endless expansion. See, unlike Dread Draw, you're quiet in this one.
Funny how the game that I really didn't like, I had more to say.
That's usually how it works. I mean, if you love a game, you'll talk to death about it. If you hate a game,
you won't shut up.
You won't shut up. When the game is okay, it's hard for you to go on a large rant.
It is hard. But I will say that I could see myself playing this a little more often, probably with you in the background, moving my dice.
What's funny is that I've been with you every single time you've played. You haven't let me roll the dice.
Every time you rolled the dice, that's why I almost died at the beginning of the last game.
You won't let me roll your ship die. I thought, hey, we can play it as a 2-player. We'll trade dice. And you're like, I'm not giving you my dice.
Okay, well next time we'll play together.
I don't know. I don't have cooties. I beat you at Alien Frontiers yesterday, so obviously dice. Anyway, this has been Chris from Deus Ex Machina, and I'm with
Nicole.
And this has been Deep Space D6, a pretty good game.
It has potential.
Not fantastic. It's as good as it can get being a solitaire game. Not as good as a Nyrum. We'll leave it at that.